My name is Joan Irene Kelly, and I am here. My parents are Gertrude Ridland Kelly, who came to America when she was 9, and from Norway. And my father is Milton Robert Kelly, who his parents came from Norway, but he was born in 1890 in Morton, Minnesota. Well, we didn't live on the farm, but Dad had up to, I believe it was 7 farms, and in the Franklin, Morton area. And those farms they raised cattle on the West Farm and on some of the other farms too. And these were cattle for meat, not milk producing cattle. And that was his love. And he then raised corn for feeding those cattle on the other farms. They were also farms that his father had bought, and he inherited a few of those. Mm-hmm. Franklin, my mother and father were married, and Dad built a home in Franklin, originally for his mother, but we lived there, and there were 6 children that lived there. It was a 2-story brick, beautiful really for its time, and it was on the end of one main street. I was sad when we left Minnesota. I was really 5, almost 6 probably, but I remember one of Mother's friends telling me, I think it was Ekberg, told me that I had cried when we had left Minnesota. So we took that trip out to California. My parents had been to California on their honeymoon and loved it. They had gone to Long Beach in Southern California and traveled. So they had looked into leaving Minnesota and Franklin and going to the cities, but they decided against that and decided to go all the way out to California. I lived in our home that was a Spanish, beautiful home, 2-story in Pasadena for 3 years. And it had a beautiful staircase going up, wrought iron staircase. It had a fish pond in a patio off of the dining room that we filled in because Kenny was of the age that he could fall into it and be hurt. While we were there, Dad bought Lucky, our beautiful collie. He was of the Lassie generation, or he was looked just like Lassie. And then I had a cat, Nippy, and she would have cats all the time, and one time they were born outside, and she had brought them in and into our basement. She would bring in, and then I remember Mother cooking horse meat for Lucky. My parents loved animals and babied them just like we do. From age 8 to 18, I lived at 1407 Oakland Place in Arcadia, California. That was a big home. modern ranch style, U-shaped, and then went back to garage in the back and an area to park cars, and then a big front drive, and then a drive back. So there was plenty of room for my brother's go-karts and for me to roller skate, and a lot of basketballs. Okay, and we had a pool, and I started 3rd grade at Highland Oaks in Arcadia, and was on the became a Brownie and a Girl Scout there. Had made a lot of good friends that I still have today, and so that was a good place to grow up. And we took swimming. Kenny and I took swimming classes, and I was very afraid of the deep end. And my brother David swam across the pool with me, and from then on I was a fish. You know, I loved the water, and we dove and swam. We had many gatherings there because the people at church and the Luther League would want to come there, or friends. So it was quite active with people. The other thing that was really important at that time was there were houses being built, and we could play around in the houses before they were being built. And before they were there were beautiful mustard fields that we could play in, and you'd crawl and mat it down and make a, house, a little house here, a little fort here. And Kenny and his friends would be throwing dirt clods at Sherry and I. We laugh about it when you're older. But then we would make food there. We had little like pepper or, do little house things there. We really were there all day until the sun was gone, and then go home. Like I say, there was not much supervision in my growing up, and that makes you kind of independent. And then when you come into a situation where you have a lot of structure, it's kind of irritating, So that kind of shaped a personality, I suppose. My friends used to think that my parents were from the old country. And I suppose that is the type of life that I experienced, was an immigrant. I was 1st generation immigrant. And although I didn't notice it, I didn't really notice it as until I got back to Minnesota, and there was more people who were that way. Outside of our house in Arcadia, we had a basketball net, and I know I would try many times to do it. I'm not great at basketball, but my brothers would tease me incessantly, but not mean. They were really very good brothers. I was lucky. We could fly kites on the fall when the winds came. And I remember one time I was out there alone and I had my kite and I wanted to bring it down, and I started rolling it over my arm. And then my arm was stuck with the kite. Well, I don't know how it, but of course somebody helped me. But nobody was there. I probably yelled until somebody got there to help me with it. But, this is one of those things you remember. We also had trash for burning in the back. There was a place you could put your trash in and burn it. And in Arcadia, in California, you could only burn certain times because of the smog. We had a quite hard time with smog. Well, then we'll go back now to that trip to Minnesota. So Virginia stayed there, I'm not sure where, but David stayed with, I think it was Genevieve and David in Franklin, and worked on the farm, the West Farm, and he and David did a lot of fixing of the fences and doing bales of hay. And David was just, my brother David, was just black on his back from that, work there, and got really built up. Anyway, Genevieve and David were there, newly married. And the most beautiful part of that trip, too, was going to the farm and seeing this beautiful pinto, and I'll never forget it. A black and white pinto with blue eyes. And I went right up to it, and it was magical, really. I put my arms around it, and he didn't move away or anything. But of course, horses know if you're dangerous or not to them. And apparently, I didn't get on him or anything, but I heard later that David had been bucked off of him. But he was, a guy. So anyway, that was really fun, and I always have loved pintos since then. And I had always wished that I had been able to live on a ranch. That is the part of my father that I really, really loved. His earthiness, his love of animals, an understanding of nature, and understanding of people in an intuitive way. He could meet somebody and know who they were, and so anyway, then we went on through the northern, on that same trip, we went on northern North Dakota, the higher road, which had the wheat fields. And then we went to Montana and the mountains. And then we went through Washington State and went to Seattle. And we were there a little while and went out to Long Prairie in that area and saw Nellie and her husband Blumley, and they had cherry trees, and that was fun. And then we went home, and when we finally got to California and got to, the Grapevine, we were just singing California, Here I Come, right back where I started from, because our life there was so good and we had seen so much, and it was really good to get home. Yeah. And so that's what, was difficult for me in my older age, that California was different. It was like you can't ever go home because it changes.